Well, welcome everybody. Thursday afternoon here. Laura Fair with me today. Excited to chat. One of the things that Laura and I have been talking about a lot lately. We've been in the classroom an awful lot, and these leaders are still kind of telling us that retaining good talent is a challenge for them. And so Laura and I got talking about it, and she has just an amazing perspective that I think is sometimes lost in this conversation. And so we decided we'd get together and just have a quick conversation about it. So, Laura, over to you. I'd love to hear that point of view that I know is so amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Yeah, just the question, how do we keep good talent? I was reflecting a lot about it, and I think the reframe I kept coming up with was, are we even giving people the opportunity to be quote unquote good? Is everyone able to maximize their potential? And oftentimes that's really not the case. I think we both see that. And when I hear the word retention or retain, what comes to mind is like, are we just trying to keep people? Like, what about actualizing our talent rather than just trying to retain them?
I love it. And it's the what does good even look like, right? And I actually just was on a coaching call before you and I jumped on here. And one of the things that additionally is adds to the complexity of this is the leader I was talking about doesn't even know what his team members want. So how are we supposed to maximize talent if we don't even know what they want? We can't actualize them if we're not actually asking them what it is that would be actualizing for them. And so, from my perspective, that's just in these one-on-one meetings that I talk to this manager about is putting some structure in place that actually makes their development one of the line items in the
Mm.
meetings. And I know that you have additional perspective on what that actualizing means based on different personality styles and different people. So love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And, I understand we don't know what we don't know, but I think as leaders, it's our responsibility to know these things. It's our responsibility to know what motivates our team, how they learn, process, their personality styles, how they like to communicate. It's our role as the leader to really adapt to meet them where they are. Like sometimes we might need to pull them out of their style a little bit to kind of meet in the middle. But for the most parts, I don't think the not knowing it's a valid excuse anymore. It's our responsibility to know. And in terms of a lot of the work I do is in neurodiversity in the workplace, and we all have different brains. We all learn, think, process, and behave differently. And what does that mean in terms of how we're managing our people, how we're training them, how we're even just hiring them in the first place? And I think it comes back down to that awareness. Like really, that level of awareness is step one, and then how do we turn that into action?
So I'm curious. I'm really curious about this topic because I'm wondering, is it then about us as leaders kind of asking for what the neurodivergent person might need in terms of what's the best way for you to learn? What do I need to do differently to support you? Is it that simple, or is it much more complex than that?
Well, I think that's an amazing first step, honestly, because so many people aren't even doing that, right? And what happens is, the onus comes on the person who's neurodivergent or experiencing disability in the workplace to disclose, to open up to their managers about the challenges or limitations they might be having. And that's really difficult to do. And oftentimes people don't do that, whether it's fear of discrimination, losing their job. Maybe they feel like if I just keep trying harder, which is oftentimes the case. And neurodivergent people, you know, they're severely underemployed or unemployed because they're having to navigate a system that really isn't set up for them to succeed in the first place. The traditional workplace is really, it's unfortunately littered with barriers for neurodivergent individuals. And that constant overcompensation of kind of navigating a system, like I said, that's not set up for you to succeed, it's exhausting, right? And it leads to burnout and anxiety. And when we have the I don't know perspective, maybe the individual's unaware that they're even neurodivergent. That was certainly my case. And maybe their manager is unaware. And what happens is we start to kind of create these stories and we label these employees as maybe not a good fit. They're a bad employee. They're lazy. They're this, they're that. And it's not that they're bad talent. Maybe they're just unsupported talent, right? So, um, given the right environment, role alignment, being able to have adjustments or accommodations, the right culture or equipped and knowledge managers, um, you know, it doesn't have to be so disabling in the workplace, right? We can change the system rather than, having this person constantly having to mask or change who they are to meet this
Yeah.
system. And that's what's going on now, unfortunately.
And so, two things there that come to mind for me as you're talking. One, and I think this may go broader than neurodivergence, but certainly as part of it, is psychological safety in the workplace.
Hmm.
So, almost like we hear a lot about how people can't even be themselves. So, this inclusion safety, certainly for neurodivergent people, we're done right there. But if we get past that, now we move to learner safety, which is I feel like I can make a mistake and that might be okay. Well, we're done again, in my experience, because we're not really good at that. We create these environments where mistakes are punished and it's all bad. And let's say we could get past that, then we go to this inclusion safety, not inclusion, sorry, the safety where I feel like I can actually bring my point of view across. So I can contribute. It's called contributor safety, in fact. And then the last one is, which I think we rarely get to, if I'm being honest, is this challenger safety. Now I can actually say, you know what, Laura, I'm not so sure that that's the right thing to do. And so, I think that maybe that is a problem for lots of people. And I can only imagine that it gets accentuated for folks of neurodivergence. My second thought is, as you know, Leanne was diagnosed ADHD a couple years ago, and what I'm not seeing is the support system. So she is having to go to her own devices to figure this all out. How to be successful in a non-accommodating environment, something that you just said. So I'm living this real life, real time with her as she tries to navigate it. And so it raises a question for me. I think I might be putting you on the spot, but we'll see where this goes. Is if you could give leaders maybe two or three top tips of what they could do to better support their team members, what would you say?
Hmm. I think the awareness that it is so complex and different for everyone, every individual. And I think allowing the space for someone to process the kind of journey they're going on, especially for individuals who are newly diagnosed. We're seeing so much of that, especially with women in the workplace who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Um, and you almost go through like a grief cycle, really. You spent your whole life overcompensating, the education system that maybe wasn't set up for you to succeed. Going on to post secondary, maybe again, more overcompensation. You get into the workplace, more overcompensation. And then all of a sudden, you get a diagnosis, and everything you've ever known now has a different lens, right? And it's really challenging because like you said, you don't get a roadmap. I was first diagnosed with PTSD in the workplace, and I'm on Zoom, I get a diagnosis, and then next thing I know, I'm closing my laptop and I'm just left to my own devices, right? You like what do you I literally tried to work the next day. Like that's how I approached it. And then a few months later, I'm diagnosed with ADHD. I walk out with a document just outlining my deficits, right? So again, I didn't come away with the know how to manage my ADHD or PTSD after diagnosis. That was left for me to figure out on my own, which is
So
challenging and exhausting as well.
yeah, so lots of great messages in there. What I'm hearing is, first of all, we have to individualize it. So everybody's different. And we talk about this in our leadership program that this old notion of a one size fits all leadership approach just doesn't work. And here we are again, and from a different point of view, seeing that it's just not working, which then leads to we have to personalize this journey. So we have to help people to be successful rather than leaving it to their own devices. The last thing I heard, and we say this to Jordan all the time, is, buddy, this is a superpower for you. This is an absolute superpower. But what really struck me is you said that it talked about all your deficiencies. It didn't talk about it as being a superpower. So imagine I can only imagine the emotions that you and others go through when they get this diagnosis. There's a negative connotation attached to it. Then we go out in the world and we don't feel supported,
Mhm.
but we're asked to succeed, or we're told we're not good enough. And it's sad, really. It's a sad space that we're at. So, what else advice might you give if we just sort of summarize this up? Any other advice that you might give someone like yourself, having gone through this journey yourself? What would you tell someone who's maybe starting their journey where you were several years ago?
Oof, that is a tricky one. I think being patient is important. Being able to kind of ride the waves that come with the journey. It's not linear, certainly not. It's challenging, and I think understanding what your challenges are and finding the support to help you along the way, and then taking a strengths based approach. We just talked about the deficits, and it wasn't until I did my ADHD coaching training that I really started to take a strengths based approach and let go of the other narratives of, you know, how my deficits are holding me back. Um, I think we need more of that in the workplace because a lot of things that happen in terms of performance management is we're focusing so much on these deficits that it's how we're wired. It's not a matter of trying harder to fix it. So, if we could focus more on the strengths and letting people really lean into that and tap into that, I think, there's so much opportunity for that, and it will make a world of difference for that individual.
I,
It can
I
get rid
love
of a
it.
lot of shame as well.
Yeah. I'm looking at my bookcase right now to the book called Strength Finder. I'm sure you've seen it before.
Yes,
And
yeah, yeah, I have it too.
one of the things that I'm reminded of in that mostly the book talks about the 25 strengths. You get your top five. But one of the things I'm reminded of in that is we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to fix people and make them better. And we don't spend enough time on leveraging their strengths. So I appreciate that as sort of our final thing today, which is let's just go out and find the good in people, find the strengths in people, and work with that rather than focusing on all the things they don't do, maybe as societal perfection.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Catch them
awesome.
doing things right.
What a novel concept. Awesome. Well, Laura, thank you so much. If this has been helpful for you, reach out to Laura, reach out to myself. We'd love to chat with you more about how we might be able to help you. Don't go it alone, I think, as Laura would say. So thanks everybody for joining us today, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you.